Okay, I don't want to alarm you, but the MCU might be back. Fantastic Four First Steps kicks off Phase 6 of the MCU and marks the beginning of a new chapter for the MCU as it takes place in a separate timeline detached from everything that's come before, and it is an entirely no homework required Marvel movie. God, it feels so good to say that. I've admittedly been very distanced from the MCU for the past few years. You can say I've been fatigued. I still get around to the movies after some time passes, but admittedly, I've been completely checked out of everything they're doing on Disney Plus ever since Moon Knight. And going into this movie, I had my reservations. One, because I'm actually quite a fan of Tim Story's Fantastic Four from 2005. Say what you want about that movie, but I think for its time, it did a lot of things that were ahead of its time. I still feel like that movie doesn't get the appreciation that it deserves, and no, it's not perfect, but I enjoy it a lot. But overall, I don't think there's ever been a definitive adaptation of these characters before. And don't even get me started on Fant Four Stick. If I'm ever subjected to that so-called movie again, I'm gonna have to assume that I died and woke up in hell.
Say that again?
That atrocity aside, I haven't considered myself one of Marvel's biggest fans for quite a few years now, and even though the buzz surrounding this movie was that it was Marvel at its peak form, I was very hesitant to buy into the hyperbolic narrative, as that seems to be the conversation going around every new Marvel project upon initial release, even Thunderbolts, which I have seen and I thought was fine. I had to see for myself, and I went into this movie with zero expectations, and I gotta say, they did it right this time. All in all, this truly does feel like a return to form for Marvel, and while watching, it had the same effect on me as the first Iron Man. By that I mean it places heavy importance on delivering a quality story first and foremost, and wasn't weighed down by how it fit into the greater universe. It's a contained story, and it feels like the beginning of something rather than something that has to carry on in an already established continuity. I can't tell you how refreshing that was to be able to enjoy a story for what it is rather than what it means in the grander scheme of things. And as it is, it's a very solid adaptation of Marvel's first family, one that honors each of these characters, giving them all their due diligence and respect. I've always had a soft spot for the Fantastic Four, and I think more than most, these characters, even with their incredible powers, make it very easy to find pieces of ourselves in each one of them. At the end of the day, they're regular people that experienced a freak encounter that genetically modified them forever, and now they have to come to terms with these powers, but more importantly, come together as a family to figure out how to use those powers for good. That's the most prominent theme here with these characters, that if you can't dial that in, the rest fails to resonate. But luckily, they really got the family dynamic right here. The way the film is framed, it opens with a quick montage celebrating the first family, recapping the journey that led them to where they are and how they became so beloved in the world. So when we catch up with this family, they've already lived with their powers for a few years and their bond is already established. The film does a great job at catching us up to speed simply by using different archival footage and interviews over a news broadcast to tell us where these characters are. And the little montage it opens up with is just as effective as if they were to spend the first 40 minutes giving us the entire origin once again. 2025 feels like the year of superhero films that don't feel the need to spend the first movie in a new adaptation reintroducing us to the origin that we're already familiar with, and that's very refreshing. And while I was very skeptical going in, I've got to say the casting here is pitch perfect. Pedro Pascal as Reed is the perfect mix of heroic and sophisticated. He's very conflicted with being the scientist who has to consider every possible outcome while struggling to choose between the decisions that benefit just his family specifically or the rest of the world. And I know people seem to take issue with Pedro Pascal these days because he seems to be in everything, which he is, but I think it's for good reason. And here again, he proves that he's just a very dynamic actor that's able to take on a bunch of different roles and give them their own unique flair, and that's no different here. And Vanessa Kirby, in my opinion, gives the definitive performance as Sue Storm. While some would argue that that's not a very high bar, if there was any debate, she silences it fairly quickly. She leads with her heart, expressing love for her family and the world that she fights for. But on top of all that, she also becomes a mother in this movie, which is very integral to the plot and becomes a much needed dramatic weight and emotional force. She does a great job at showing the lengths a mother will go to protect her children, and throughout the course of the movie she has to make quite a few tough decisions that not only amplify her character but the story as a whole. She is very much the glue of the entire movie. I thought everything with her worked incredibly well, and if you didn't get that down, I feel like the rest wouldn't have been nearly as impactful. And Joseph Quinn as Johnny is my favorite character in the movie, and while I still probably prefer Chris Evans' portrayal of the character, he adds the energy that this movie really needs. He's still girl crazy and immature at times, but what I really appreciated about his portrayal of the character is that he's driven by this innate desire to do good, constantly doing whatever it takes to move the needle forward, finding answers, putting himself in the face of danger. He's aware of the way he's perceived, but it never stops him from wanting to be more. I've never really been on the Joseph Quinn hype train. I thought he was fine as Eddie in Stranger Things, but I've never been with the rest of the crowd that said, cast him in everything. But for some reason, he really worked and won me over in this movie. And by far the one I was most excited for, Ebon Bachrach, who notably is from my favorite show of all time, The Bear, plays Ben Grimm, the Thing. And I really enjoyed his interpretation of the character. Unlike Michael Chiklis' version, he's more accepted his fate, grown more comfortable in his new appearance. And he spends a lot of time being very passionate about his family and even cooking, and increasingly more agitated as the film goes along, as more and more people want him to say this one catchphrase from the animated version of the Fantastic Four that he's not even in.
What time is it, Ben?
No.
What time is it, Ben?
No, Johnny.
Say it!
I don't wanna!
Say it!
And it's a nice continued bit throughout the movie. And oddly enough, he probably has the least characterization out of the crew, but even still, he adds the right amount of heart when needed. And contrary to what you might believe going in, this movie isn't really heavy on the action. It spends a lot of time with the characters and giving them moments of dialogue. But even still, the look of this movie, the visuals, the action set pieces that are in the mix are so grand in scale and very well executed. It's possibly the best looking MCU movie there's ever been. There's an entire space sequence that happens in the middle of this movie when the Fantastic Four go to meet with Galactus for the first time that took my breath away. The lines of what was real and what was movie magic were blurred, and it was just completely immersive. People have been making the comparisons to Interstellar, and while that might seem very far out there, that's actually not a bad comparison. Not to mention the movie is set in this retro-futuristic 60s landscape that we've never really touched on in the universe before. It's breaking new territory, and I think it adds for a fresh style that rejuvenates the universe in a lot of ways, makes it interesting again and more dynamic. And it's not just a gimmick. They really hold true to that aesthetic for the entire runtime. It embraces the comic origins and the campy elements more than any Marvel movie really ever has before, and I think that's what they really needed to tap into here to make it successful. And on top of that, Michael Giacchino hands down composes my favorite MCU score to date. I've never been the type to come out of a movie like this and immediately go to my phone to start playing the score from the movie, but I've had it on repeat since I first watched the movie. From first cue to Out to Launch to Starship Birth, it all feels so cosmic and grand and epic. Technically speaking, this movie really fires on all cylinders. Story aside, it's just a great movie to experience in the theater. It uses the IMAX format to its full potential, and it's very immersive. Also, it brings me immense joy to say that Galactus is terrifying. It's incredibly refreshing to have a villain yet again that feels like an actual threat within the universe. And for this being the first movie to kick off a new adventure, a new chapter for the MCU, this movie felt like it had a weight to it. It felt like there were real stakes, like it was actually a matter of life and death. And Galactus, beyond just being the planet eater, has extra motivations that make him even more compelling, and it keeps you invested throughout the entire story just to see how everything unfolds. You're uncertain whether or not the Fantastic Four are actually going to prevail here. Not to mention, Ralph Ineson just has one of those voices that will rattle you to your core. And assisting Galactus is Shala Ball, who's a new interpretation of the Silver Surfer, who we haven't seen in live action before. Everyone's been up in arms about a female Silver Surfer, but I've got to say, she was also a very compelling and well-executed character. She's filled with so much conviction and a desire to serve a greater purpose. There are moments between her and Johnny that were actually bone-chilling. She contains so many different moral complexities that leave you questioning every decision she makes, and while you can see where she's coming from, she also makes decisions that inherently contradict her greater purpose. When adapting a character as complex as the Silver Surfer, it can be very easy to fall into the one-dimensional category, but they do a great job at fleshing her out. And really, if it wasn't for her character, I don't know if the weight would have been felt as much whenever Galactus showed up. Now, the movie isn't without its flaws. While it's solid overall, it has some pacing issues that I feel like hold it back. It tends to stumble a bit, not always being able to balance the more fast-paced action sequences with the more earnest character moments, moving from one scene to the next so quickly that it almost felt a bit episodic. I just would have liked more time to marinate with certain things. And I think with this movie, Matt Shakman definitely proves that he's a very competent filmmaker, overall making a film that is extremely solid and one of the most consistent in the entire MCU. But I wonder often if his background in television, working on WandaVision, kind of played into the pacing issues here. But that being said, everything has a purpose, and I would rather be left wanting more than feeling like they gave us too much. All in all, I came away from this movie feeling very hopeful for the future and satisfied with the film as a whole. There wasn't much left on the table at all, and it really shows great promise for what's to come. And if this is the quality that we can expect from the MCU moving forward, I think we're in for a real treat, because this was such a fun time. And yes, you're gonna want to stay for the mid-credit scene of this movie. It's pretty exciting, a big tease for sure, and audiences are gonna lose their mind. But with all that being said, guys, make sure to comment down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the movie, and also tell me, are you a fan of the Fantastic Four movie from 2005, or am I on an island of my own? Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and until next time, I'll see y'all later. Peace out.